Other famous Americans who claimed that America was a Christian nation or was built on Christian principles included leaders such as General William Eaton, leader of America's first war following the American Revolution, and Daniel Webster, the great defender of the Constitution. U.S. presidents declaring that America was a Christian nation or that it was founded on Christian principles included John Quincy Adams, Abraham Lincoln, Woodrow Wilson, Zachary Taylor, Harry Truman, Andrew Jackson, William McKinley, Herbert Hoover, and Teddy Roosevelt. Educational leaders who taught students in classic American textbooks that Christianity was the basis of our country and its government included notables such as Noah Webster, the schoolmaster to America, Jedediah Morse, the father of American geography, and William McGuffey of the famous McGuffey Readers. All of these and so many more founding fathers, leaders, educators, and official departments of government declared that America was a Christian nation or that it was influenced by or built on Christian principles by Christian leaders.
There is an attempt to rewrite history. I think that's a theme inside of the episodes that we have put together. There is a thematic element that revisionism, or a revisionist, is attempting to either completely walk away from documentation or to cite very few small examples and make it seem like they're painting all of the of the founding fathers with the same brush. So ultimately, original intent and some of the works that prove, you go back to the original documents, to the original words, to the original founding fathers' own writings, and we're finding something 180 degrees that we were taught in school.
And what they do with revisionism is not just get things wrong. One of the greatest forms of revisionism is omission. And that's really hard to identify. I mean, if you have a textbook that says Abraham Lincoln dropped a nuclear weapon on Korea to end World War I, we'd all say, that's wrong. That's wrong on 4 counts. But if you have a textbook that doesn't even mention Abraham Lincoln, then you don't notice that. What's not there, you have a tendency not to see. That's one of the greatest forms of revisionism, is simply not to talk about certain elements that had been so significant for so long. Now, you do get some revisionism in textbooks like this. It says it's a godless constitution. That is a rewriting of what's there. But then you also simply get textbooks that don't talk anything about any founding father, about faith or lack of faith. They're just silent. And that is the worst form of insult, is to be ignored. And that's what we've done with large portions of American history, simply ignore it. We simply don't talk about it. And that's just as substantial a form of revisionism as is absolutely saying something wrong and rewriting it and making it into something it never said. So that's a form that we have to deal with. But that omission is what causes us not to know the reasons that the Constitution really is not a godless document.
A closer look into our nation's history reveals surprising and irrefutable evidence of the Bible's influence on our founding fathers and our nation's Constitution. But does a biblically inspired Constitution make America a Christian nation? And is there a place for the Bible in today's modern political climate? Discover our nation's godly history in the American Heritage series. America, this is your heritage.
The number one source of the quotes, help me understand it again. So just help me. The number one source of the quotes that the founding fathers found were traced back to the Bible.
That's right. The quotes that they used in political writings describing why they did what they did. Why did they do separation of powers? Where did they come up with the idea of separation of powers? Why did they do checks and balances? Where did they come? You read all the writings that dealt with all those issues, and you see who they're quoting. Well, they'll quote Montesquieu because Montesquieu talks about separation of powers. They'll quote different entities. But when you track every quote back, 3,154 quotes, you track them all back to see the source. The overwhelming source of those ideas is the Bible.
And we have people wanting to tell us we have a godless constitution.
That's right. But we buy that. I mean, by and large, most Americans buy that. Government is a secular institution. It was designed that way. It's supposed to be that way. Why would they say that? They don't know, but they've never heard any evidence that would indicate otherwise.
I see.
Right.
And so what happens is the absence of evidence is proof of what the assertion is. So when they say it's a godless constitution, I don't know of any evidence that disproves that. They must be right. And that's where most Americans are. They don't know about the study of political scientists. They don't know what's called the Sundays Accepted Clause. They don't know about the Common Law Clause in Article 7. They don't know about the 4 oath clauses that are there. They don't know about in the Year of Our Lord clause that appears. There's 6 aspects of the Constitution that absolutely disprove any notion that it's godless. But we don't know what those are. In 1854, following an extensive 1-year investigation, a report in the U.S. Congress succinctly declared,
Had the people during the Revolution had a suspicion of any attempt to war against Christianity, that revolution would have been strangled in its cradle. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution and the amendments, the universal sentiment was that Christianity should be encouraged, but not any one denomination. In this age, there can be no substitute for Christianity. That was the religion of the founders of the Republic, and they expected it to remain the religion of their descendants.
and half a century later, in 1892, the U.S. Supreme Court also conducted a thorough review of American history. After citing more than 60 historical precedents, the court concluded,
There is no dissonance in these declarations. There is a universal language pervading them all, having one meaning. They affirm and reaffirm that this is a religious nation. This is a Christian nation.
Most folks have never heard of major portions of the Constitution. If I were to say one of the chief ways to keep judicial activism under control in the judiciary is the exceptions clause of the Constitution, people would say, what's the exceptions clause? I've never heard of that.
Well, let me just say right now, what is the exceptions clause? Okay.
One of the notions that people have is the federal judiciary can deal with any issue that's out there. That they get to put the final word on any issue that is before the court. The Constitution says that the judges can only deal with those issues that Congress give them permission to deal with. So Congress can, and that's what's called the exceptions clause. The court can deal with anything except those issues that Congress withholds from it. So we don't have to have a constitutional amendment to have voluntary school prayer. Congress can simply pass a law that says no federal judge can deal with the issue of prayer at a football game. We've accepted it out of their dominion. Wow. It's been done over 200 times in American history. It's a great way to keep judges under control because consistently what we have now is the higher the poll number of the people supporting an issue, the more likely it is for the judges to strike it down. Wow. They've gone into this mentality that says the role of the judiciary is to protect the minority from the majority. Wait a minute, that's oxymoronic. Because what you've just said is the role of the judiciary is to make the minority into the majority. Right. Then who protects the majority from the minority? You know, only one side ever wins in politics, and it's supposed to be the bigger side. That's why it's the consent of the governed. The judiciary is taking it on themselves to say, oh, if the governed are for it, that's unfair. So if we have a person over here that's an atheist and doesn't want to hear anybody else say under God in the pledge, we'll make you all stop so that he won't be offended. That's not the role of government.
And the Founding Fathers set forth a provision to keep that kind of nonsense from happening.
That's right.
And we don't hear about it, nor do we just debate it.
You know, the Constitution is such an easy document. It is a short document. You can sit down, you can read it in a half an hour. It's just not a hard document to read. Most Americans have never read it even once in their life. The period of time it takes to watch a sitcom, you could read the Constitution and know what that document says. But we rely on media to tell us what it says. We rely on law professors. We rely on guys like this to tell us what it says. Yeah. If we read it for ourselves, it's a no-brainer. It's a very easy thing.
A closer look into our nation's history reveals surprising and irrefutable evidence of the Bible's influence on our founding fathers and our nation's Constitution. But does a biblically inspired Constitution make America a Christian nation? And is there a place for the Bible in today's modern political climate? Discover our nation's godly history in the American Heritage series. America, this is your heritage.